Remember that gut-wrenching moment? The air left your lungs, the world tilted, and a cold dread settled deep in your bones. That feeling, chosen ones, when someone who rejected you in your lowest season delivered a blow that felt like an existential wound. You crumbled, perhaps, but even then, a flicker of something new began to stir. Now, that same person, oblivious to the phoenix rising from your ashes, finally realizes exactly who you are. The shock still reverberates, a phantom ache in your chest, but it forged something unbreakable within you. The echo of absence can sometimes be louder, more piercing than any physical sound. There is a specific, guttural ache that settles in the hollow space left behind, not by a physical departure, but by a shattering revelation. You find yourself staring at an empty chair, chosen one, a chair that was never truly occupied by the person you believed sat there, the relationship you thought you shared. This is the profound, disorienting grief of mourning an illusion. A sorrow so unique, it often goes unspoken, misunderstood, and profoundly isolating. It is not the grief for a life lost, but for a reality that never existed, a narrative woven with threads of deception and your own generous, unearned trust. This isn't the clean cut of a genuine loss, where a life concluded and memories, though painful, remain intact as true reflections of what was. No, this grief is a brutal undoing, a meticulous excavation of every shared moment, every whispered promise, every comfortable silence, only to find the bedrock beneath them was crumbling sand. The foundation you believed in, the very structure of that connection, collapses inward. It feels like a retrospective earthquake, tremors shaking the ground long after you thought the storm had passed, revealing the fault lines that were always present, always waiting to crack. The pain isn't just about what you lost, but about what you thought you had, and the dizzying, nauseating realization that it was all a mirage, a cruel trick of the light designed to keep you tethered to an empty promise. Every memory becomes suspect, every tender touch reevaluated through a lens of bitter clarity. Was that smile genuine? Was that concern truly felt? Did their words hold any weight, or were they merely the performance of affection, the practiced cadence of someone playing a part? This reevaluation is a form of self-inflicted torture, forcing you to rewrite your own history, to redact chapters that once brought comfort and now only serve as stinging reminders of your unwitting participation in their elaborate charade. You mourn not just the person you thought they were, but the version of yourself that existed within that relationship, the one who gave freely, loved deeply, and believed unequivocally. That version of you feels foolish, naive, exposed. The sting of betrayal lends itself to this unique shade of grief, a feeling that your very discernment was compromised, your intuition overruled by a desire to see the best, to believe in the potential. It's a profound loss of innocence, a harsh lesson learned in the currency of human connection. The future you so carefully constructed in your mind, the one with them at your side, dissolves into vapor. All those shared dreams, the milestones you envisioned, the quiet comfort of growing old together, they dissipate, not as futures that tragically ended, but as futures that were never destined to begin, never truly tethered to a shared reality. You grieve the ghost of a future that never was, a phantom limb ache for a life that was merely a projection on a screen of their making. And in this profound emptiness, there is an invisible wound, a secret sorrow. How do you explain to others that you are mourning something that, in their eyes, never truly existed? How do you articulate the devastating impact of realizing that the person you opened your soul to was, in essence, a stranger wearing a familiar mask? This isolation deepens the grief, forcing you to carry the weight of this disillusionment alone, processing a betrayal that feels both intensely personal and frustratingly intangible to the outside world. They might see only a breakup, a relationship's end, but you, chosen one, are grappling with the death of truth itself, the brutal revelation that the very fabric of your connection was spun from lies and calculated manipulation. The emotional labor of dismantling an entire world, brick by illusory brick, is exhausting. It takes a monumental effort to sift through the debris, to separate what was real from what was always counterfeit. You are not just healing from a heartbreak. You are recovering from a spiritual concussion, a deep shock to your system that leaves you questioning the very ground beneath your feet. Your trust receptors have been recalibrated, your internal compass spun wildly off course. This grief is gritty because it forces you into the uncomfortable trenches of self-reflection, demanding you confront not just their treachery, but also the vulnerability that allowed you to be so deeply invested in something so fundamentally unsound. Yet this agonizing process is not without its purpose. This grief, as sharp and suffocating as it feels, is the crucible in which a new, unyielding strength is forged. The pain of the empty chair, the desolation of the shattered illusion, carves out a deeper understanding within you. It is the cost of your inherent capacity for profound love, for radical empathy, for seeing potential where others saw only red flags. Your heart, once so open to the deceptive embrace, now bears the scars of wisdom etched by the fire of truth. You are mourning not just an illusion, but the illusion of your own vulnerability to such a profound deception. This profound realization, while initially devastating, is ultimately a liberation. It is the arduous journey from blissful ignorance to painful clarity, from a comforting lie to an uncomfortable truth. You are shedding the weight of a false narrative, even if the shedding feels like tearing off your own skin. This particular grief, chosen one, is your purification. It demands you stare unflinchingly into the void, acknowledge the space that was never truly filled, and recognize the courage it takes to grieve for what was never real, and yet was everything to you. This is the brave, necessary work of reclaiming your reality, one agonizing truth at a time. Many of you, having walked through the crucible, feel the spiritual nudge, sometimes even a powerful push to forgive. It comes from deep within your spiritual programming, from scriptures interpreted in specific ways, from well-meaning advisors who preach an immediate, unconditional absolution. There's an inherent beauty in the ideal of forgiveness, a profound spiritual release that promises peace. But for the chosen one, for those of you who have endured betrayal and rejection in your most vulnerable moments, there is a critical distinction that must be understood, a spiritual truth often overlooked: the profound and often devastating danger of premature forgiveness. This isn't about withholding grace forever. It's about understanding the timing, the process, and the non-negotiable requirement of boundaries. Premature forgiveness is not true absolution. It is often a spiritual bypass, a desperate attempt to shortcut the arduous journey of healing and justice. It is the act of attempting to wipe the slate clean before the wound has even begun to scab, before the infection has been fully purged. When you rush to forgive, especially without the fortification of clear, unyielding boundaries, you are not engaging in an act of spiritual liberation. You are, in effect, committing an act of spiritual self-betrayal. You are telling your soul that its pain does not matter enough to demand recognition, its boundaries are permeable, and its sacred space is open to continued violation. Without boundaries, forgiveness becomes an open invitation for a repeat performance of the very hurt that broke you. It's akin to patching a leaky dam with a damp paper towel. The underlying structural flaw remains, and the water will inevitably find its way through again, perhaps with even greater force. This isn't cynicism, it's spiritual pragmatism. A boundary is not a wall built of hatred, it is a fence built of self-respect, a declaration of what is acceptable and what is not. It is the demarcation line around your sacred energy, your emotional well-being, and your spiritual peace. To forgive without setting these boundaries is to leave the back door of your soul unlocked after having just evicted a thief. You might believe you are embodying compassion, but in truth, you are cultivating a spiritual susceptibility that can become deeply corrosive. The spiritual danger is multifaceted. Firstly, it warps your understanding of divine justice. God is a God of love, yes, but also a God of justice. There are consequences for actions, both in the temporal and spiritual realms. When you prematurely absolve someone without them genuinely acknowledging their transgression, without them demonstrating repentance or a changed heart, you are, in essence, undermining a fundamental spiritual law. You are attempting to short-circuit a divine process meant to teach, to refine, and to bring about true transformation, not just for you, but for the one who caused the hurt. Your rushed forgiveness can become an enabler, giving implicit permission for others to continue their damaging patterns, believing there are no real repercussions for their actions. This does not serve them. It keeps them spiritually stunted. Secondly, and perhaps more critically for the chosen one, premature forgiveness without boundaries erodes your discernment. Your intuition, that divine compass within you, is designed to protect you, to warn you of spiritual hazards. When you override its signals, when you force yourself to embrace a person or a situation that your gut screams against, you dull that sacred instrument. You begin to question your own internal truth, to doubt the very guidance given to you by the Spirit. This spiritual bypass creates a dangerous disconnect between your conscious mind's desire for peace and your soul's authentic need for protection and healing. It can lead to a cycle of repeated spiritual trauma, where you repeatedly offer your hand only to have it bitten, and then feel obligated to offer it again in the name of spiritual piety. This is not piety. It is spiritual malpractice against your own being. Furthermore, this rushed absolution can lead to deep-seated resentment and bitterness, precisely the things true forgiveness is meant to dissipate. When you declare forgiveness before you have fully processed the pain, before you have grieved the loss, before you have affirmed your worth and established your non-negotiables, that pain does not simply vanish. It goes underground. It festers. It becomes a toxic wellspring, poisoning other areas of your life, leaking into new relationships, and creating a cynical lens through which you view the world. You might outwardly project an image of peace and spiritual maturity, but inwardly, your spirit is roiling with unaddressed hurt, a wound that never truly closed because it was never allowed to properly bleed and heal. This is not the divine peace you seek. It is a superficial veneer over an active spiritual battlefield. To forgive someone who has shown no remorse, who has made no effort to atone, and who you have not yet barricaded from future harm, is to diminish your own sacred worth. It is to implicitly communicate that your pain, your heart, your sacred trust is not valuable enough to warrant protection. This is a subtle yet insidious form of self-abandonment. The divine spark within you, that precious essence of the Most High, demands respect and protection. It is a sacred duty for the chosen one to guard their spirit, to honor their boundaries, and to understand that true grace does not necessitate self-immolation. Your worth is not contingent on your ability to instantly absolve those who have wounded you. It is inherent, sacred, and divinely endowed. To protect that worth, sometimes the most loving act, both for yourself and potentially for the other person, is to establish an unbreachable boundary and allow the natural consequences of their actions to unfold. The path to true, spiritually sound forgiveness is a journey. It begins with acknowledging the hurt, allowing yourself to feel the full weight of the betrayal, and processing the anger and grief without judgment. It involves setting those vital boundaries, understanding that forgiveness does not always mean reconciliation. It often means releasing the burden of resentment for your own spiritual freedom, but doing so from a place of strength, clarity, and protected wisdom. It means understanding that true forgiveness is a gift you give yourself, not a free pass you hand to another for continued trespass. When you rush it, you rob yourself of the profound lessons embedded in the experience, the spiritual muscle you were meant to build, and the sacred discernment you were meant to sharpen. This is not a call to hold on to bitterness. It is a clarion call to wisdom, to discernment, to self-preservation guided by divine principles. It is a reminder that you, as a chosen one, are worthy of protection, worthy of boundaries, and worthy of a healing process that honors your sacred journey, not one that shortcuts it at your spiritual expense. Let your forgiveness be genuine, earned, and fortified by boundaries that declare your sacred space inviolable. This wisdom is not just about protecting yourself from others. It is about protecting yourself from the spiritual erosion that comes from abandoning your own soul's need for justice, recognition, and true, uncompromised healing. It is about understanding that sometimes the most profoundly spiritual act is to say, no more, this far and no further. You, my formidable chosen one, stood at the precipice of a transformation you couldn't yet fathom. When that individual, cloaked in the guise of significance, stepped away, leaving you amidst the rubble of what you thought was your life, the ground beneath you felt like it had collapsed. You genuinely believed they were a load-bearing wall, an indispensable pillar in the grand edifice of your destiny. Their absence felt like a gaping wound, a structural defect that would forever compromise your integrity. You searched for their return, not out of weakness, but out of a profound, albeit mistaken, belief in their foundational necessity. You saw them as essential, as a cornerstone, as the very support without which your future home could never stand tall. Every brick seemed to crumble, every beam threatened to give way, because you had, in that moment of vulnerability, attributed your stability to their presence, your worth to their validation, your future to their acceptance. This was not a flaw in your design. It was a carefully orchestrated stage in your becoming, a necessary illusion that would eventually give way to a breathtaking truth. Understand this with the full weight of its liberating power. They were never meant to be a load-bearing wall. They were scaffolding, temporary, a harsh, often unsightly external structure erected around you during a critical phase of internal construction. Imagine a magnificent skyscraper taking shape. Before its gleaming facade and formidable interior can stand independently, a complex network of metal poles and wooden planks must be painstakingly assembled around it. This scaffolding appears massive, intrusive, even integral to the building's very existence. It reaches dizzying heights, providing temporary pathways and support for the workers within. It shelters certain aspects, exposes others, and for a season, it is the most visible sign of progress. Yet no one ever mistakes the scaffolding for the building itself. No one laments its eventual removal, for its dismantling is the ultimate proof that the true structure is complete, solid, and ready to face the world without external assistance. That toxic individual, the one who walked away in your darkest hour, served precisely this purpose. Their rejection, their criticism, their perceived abandonment, every sharp edge of their transient presence acted as a temporary framework around your developing self. They held a space, however uncomfortable, that allowed you to build the true, indestructible foundations of your being. Their instability, their lack of true integrity, paradoxically forced you to seek and forge your own. When they withheld support, you were compelled to find it within. When they pointed out perceived flaws, you were driven to reinforce your genuine strengths. Their temporary nature was by design. It was never meant for them to be a permanent fixture, a constant source of affirmation, or a lifelong companion in your ascent. Their role was finite, specific, and ultimately profoundly empowering. The pain you felt when they departed was not the agony of a foundation crumbling, but the discomfort of scaffolding being braced, adjusted, and eventually carefully removed. It was the grit in your teeth as you hammered in your own internal rebar, poured your own concrete, and laid your own indestructible bricks. You believed the pain signified a devastating loss, a gaping void that would never be filled. But in truth, it was the friction of growth, the straining of muscles building new strength, the vital, intense energy of an edifice rising from within. The very act of them stepping away created the necessary space for you to discover your own unwavering core. They were not a support beam, chosen one. They were merely a guide rail on a bridge you were always destined to build for yourself. Across a chasm they could never truly navigate with you. Their inability or unwillingness to truly hold you up was the very catalyst that taught you how to stand taller than you ever thought possible. Think of the materials they represented. Scaffolding is often made of sturdy but ultimately temporary metals and woods, designed for functionality, not aesthetic beauty or eternal permanence. Their character, their values, their capacity for genuine love and loyalty were never meant to be the load-bearing materials of your magnificent spirit. Had they been allowed to remain, to truly become a permanent part of your inner structure, they would have introduced inherent weaknesses, points of vulnerability that would have compromised the integrity of your true destiny. They would have been anchors dragging you down, rather than wings lifting you up. Their departure, therefore, was not a demolition, but a discerning removal of unsuitable materials. It was the universe's way of ensuring that only the purest, strongest, most authentic components remain to form your actual, unshakable self. And now, as the dust settles from that period of intense construction, as you stand in the full, breathtaking majesty of who you have become, you can look back at that rejected framework with an entirely new understanding. The scaffolding served its purpose. It was vital for a time, a means to an end, but it was never the end itself. The true masterpiece was always *U*, standing proud and resplendent, built with your own hands, fueled by your own spirit, founded on your own unshakable truths. The individual who rejected you did not break you. They simply provided the temporary support system while you painstakingly, often painfully, put yourself back together, stronger, more cohesive, more breathtakingly resilient than you ever were before. Their realization of who you are now is a testament to the completed structure, the removal of the scaffolding, revealing the awe-inspiring edifice you built in their perceived absence. They are now gazing at the finished building, marveling at its height and strength, finally understanding that their role was never to be inside it, but merely to facilitate its extraordinary construction from the outside. They were a temporary phase, a lesson in self-reliance disguised as a heartbreak. And you, my chosen one, are the magnificent, independently standing monument to your own unbreakable spirit. You built this, and it is glorious. Consider the ancient echoes of a king in exile, stripped bare, fleeing from the very son he loved. This was David, the once mighty monarch, now a hunted man, traversing the wilderness road from Jerusalem with a heavy heart and a broken spirit. His throne usurped, his kingdom in chaos, his most loyal subjects scattered or dead, David walked a path of profound desolation. This was not a king in triumph, but a man brought to his knees by betrayal, experiencing a season so low, so utterly devoid of glory, that it seemed all hope had abandoned him. Every step was a testament to his suffering, every breath a prayer for deliverance. It was during this harrowing retreat, as David and his weary entourage made their way along the dusty road, that a figure emerged from the shadows of the past, brimming with a venomous hatred long harbored. This was Shimei, a relative of the deposed King Saul, whose heart was a festering wound of resentment against David. For years, Shimei had festered in the memory of Saul's downfall and David's ascent, blaming the man of God for his family's misfortune. Now, in David's abject humiliation, Shimei saw his moment, a twisted opportunity to unleash the bitterness that had long consumed him. Shimei did not approach with a whisper or a veiled insult. No, his malice was overt, public, and brutally cruel. He came out, cursing David with every step, his voice cutting through the mournful silence of the retreating royal party. He hurled stones, not just at David's guards or his companions, but directly at the king himself, striking David as he walked, each stone a physical manifestation of his festering hatred. Get out, you man of blood. You worthless fellow," Shimei shrieked, his accusations echoing in the desolate landscape. He spewed forth a torrent of condemnation, declaring that David was being punished by God for the blood of Saul's house, that the very troubles engulfing him were divine retribution. It was a vicious, unprovoked assault, not just on David's person, but on his character, his legitimacy, and his very soul, delivered precisely when David was at his most vulnerable, his defenses shattered, his spirit raw with grief. The natural human reaction from David's loyal men was swift and fiery. Abishai, one of David's most formidable warriors and a hot-headed nephew, could not bear to witness such disrespect. His hand immediately went to his sword hilt, his eyes burning with righteous indignation. "Why should this dead dog curse my lord the king?" Abishai demanded, his voice a low growl of barely contained fury. "Let me go over and take off his head." This was the immediate impulse, the visceral urge to defend honor, to retaliate against an unwarranted and cruel assault. It was the desire to silence the accuser, to make them pay for their insolence in an instant, to assert power over those who dared to disrespect a king, even a fallen one. But David's response, at this absolute nadir of his existence, was perhaps one of the most profound lessons in spiritual warfare and strategic silence ever recorded. He looked at Abishai, not with an eagerness for revenge, but with a weary wisdom that transcended the immediate insult. "What have I to do with you, you sons of Zeruiah?" David replied, his voice heavy with resignation and a deep understanding of divine sovereignty. "Let him alone and let him curse, for the Lord has told him to curse David. Perhaps the Lord will look on my affliction and repay me with good for his cursing this day." This was not weakness. It was an act of profound humility and faith. David, the warrior king, the man who had faced giants and armies, chose silence. He chose to absorb the blows, the curses, the humiliation, because he understood that some battles are not his to fight. He recognized that Shimei, in his unbridled rage, was merely a tool, perhaps even an instrument of God's will, allowing David to fully experience the bitterness of his lowest season. To retaliate then, to silence Shimei by force, would have been to fight a human battle when a spiritual one was unfolding. David understood that to strike back would be to interrupt a divine process, to deny himself the opportunity for God to demonstrate his own justice and vindication. His silence was an act of surrender to a higher power, a profound trust that if this suffering was ordained, then so too would be his deliverance. He chose not to defend himself, not to justify himself, not to explain himself, but to let the crude accusations hang in the air, knowing that God heard them too. Time, as it always does, marched on. The tide turned for David. Absalom's rebellion was crushed, the usurper slain, and David, by the grace of God and the loyalty of his remaining people, was restored to his throne. As David made his triumphant return, crossing the Jordan to re-enter his kingdom, who should appear but Shimei, no longer cursing and throwing stones, but prostrate before the king, fear etched upon his face. He came with 1,000 men of Benjamin, desperate to be the first to greet David, begging for mercy, pleading that David would not hold his past transgression against him. Again, Abishai, ever the protector, urged David to execute Shimei. "Shall not Shimei be put to death for this, because he cursed the Lord's anointed?" he demanded. But David, standing once more in the full majesty of his restored power, responded with an even greater magnanimity. "Shall any man be put to death in Israel this day? For do I not know that today I am king over Israel?" He swore an oath, then and there, that he would not put Shimei to death. David understood that, on a day of such profound restoration, of divine vindication, vengeance would only tarnish the moment. He chose to let the triumph of God's faithfulness eclipse the bitterness of human spite. His silence in his lowest moment had positioned him to act with immense grace in his highest. He did not forget Shimei, but he chose to let God's timing dictate the true outcome, rather than his own immediate desire for retribution. Years later, on his deathbed, David, now old and wise, gave Solomon, his successor, instructions concerning Shimei. "You know what Shimei son of Gera did to me," David told his son, "but do not let his gray head go down to the grave in peace." This was not David reneging on his oath. It was a king, knowing the full measure of his enemy, passing on a strategic directive. David knew Shimei's character, knew the depth of his malice, and understood that some toxic elements, left unchecked, would eventually corrupt the kingdom. Solomon, with the wisdom granted him by God, put Shimei under a house arrest of sorts, forbidding him to leave Jerusalem on pain of death. For 3 years, Shimei obeyed, but then, for a foolish errand to retrieve 2 runaway servants, he crossed the Kidron Valley, violating the king's command. And for that act of disobedience, that disregard for the established boundary. Solomon had him executed. The profound lesson for the chosen one is this: David's silence in his lowest season was not passive, it was powerfully strategic. He did not engage Shimei in a war of words or a battle of fists. He let the stones fly, he let the curses hang in the air, because he understood that his accuser was inadvertently building his own gallows. Shimei's initial outburst, his unprovoked cruelty, sealed his fate, not by David's hand in the moment of insult, but by his own continued character and eventual misstep. When you, as a chosen one, are rejected in your lowest season, when someone hurls accusations and curses at you, when they assume the worst and pile on your pain, your silence is your most potent weapon. It is an act of faith, a declaration that you trust God to fight your battles. It is the wisdom to know that engaging in the mud will only make you dirty. It is allowing your accuser to fully reveal their true character, to document their own malice for the universe to witness. The person who rejected you, who spoke ill of you when you were at your most vulnerable, like Shimei, is meticulously crafting their own downfall. They are digging their own pit, not with your shovel, but with their own words and actions. You don't need to defend, explain, or retaliate. Just be silent, absorb the blow, and trust that the God who vindicated David will, in his perfect timing, vindicate you. Your silence traps the enemy, not because it is weak, but because it is a powerful act of surrender to divine justice, which, though sometimes delayed, is never denied. There are spaces in life, chosen one, not of your choosing, yet profoundly necessary. These are the wildernesses, the desolate stretches where the echoes of the world fall silent, and the only voice you hear is the one you've spent a lifetime trying to ignore, your own, and perhaps the quiet whispers of the divine itself. It was in this very wilderness, this profound season of isolation that felt less like a choice and more like an unavoidable decree, that the true alchemical process began. You found yourself stripped bare, divested of the familiar comforts, the social balms, the constant distractions that once obscured the true contours of your being. This wasn't exile, it was a divine photographic darkroom, meticulously prepared for the precise development of your raw essence. Within those four walls of solitude, the world outside became a distant hum, a faded memory. You were no longer navigating by the flickering lights of external validation or the shifting sands of others' opinions. Instead, you were forced to consult an inner compass, to learn the constellations of your own spirit. This darkroom was not empty, it was filled with the potent, often painful, agents of transformation. The first, perhaps, was the developer raw, unvarnished self-reflection. It forced you to look at the negative, the undeveloped film of your past self, the one that was perhaps a little too eager to please, a little too quick to compromise its own truth for the sake of acceptance. This chemical bit, it stung, it revealed the hidden flaws, the blurry edges, the areas where light had been overexposed by fear or underexposed by self-doubt. You saw the ghost of who you were, not through the eyes of others, but through the stark, unforgiving lens of your own, awakened consciousness. The process wasn't gentle. Like the rhythmic agitation required in a darkroom tray, your soul was stirred repeatedly, sometimes violently, by the relentless pressure of your own company. There was nowhere to run from the truths that surfaced. You grappled with the rejection, yes, but more profoundly, you grappled with the pieces of yourself that had made you vulnerable to it. This was the stop bath, a necessary halt to the previous trajectory. A freezing of the fragile emerging image before it could be overdeveloped into bitterness or distorted by resentment. It was a conscious choice to embrace the pain as information, to learn from the wound rather than let it fester into a permanent scar that defined you. You understood, with a dawning clarity, that the isolation was not a punishment, but a sacred crucible designed to burn away all that was superficial, all that was untrue, leaving only the pure, unadulterated gold of your being. Then came the fixer, chosen one, the crucible of true permanence. This was the stage where your newfound insights, your hard-won resilience, and your unshakable understanding of your intrinsic worth became indelible. The isolation, once a source of deep ache, began to transform into a sacred sanctuary. Here, without the incessant demands and judgments of the outside world, you discovered your own rhythm, your own voice, your own unyielding strength. You learned to discern the true from the false, the superficial from the substantial, not just in others, but within yourself. The quietude became a powerful echo chamber, amplifying your intuition, sharpening your perception, and cementing a fierce independence that no external force could now diminish. The loneliness, once a companion in the wilderness, became a tutor in self-sufficiency. You learned to trust your own counsel, to rely on your own spirit, to become your own steadfast anchor in the swirling currents of existence. This period wasn't about finding distractions, it was about finding depth. It was about digging past the surface, past the identity others had assigned you, past the roles you had played, until you unearthed the bedrock of your authentic self. The vulnerability that once felt like a weakness transformed into a profound strength, not because it vanished, but because you learned to hold it, to cherish it, to understand its power as a gateway to genuine connection, but only on your terms, with those who earn the right to witness it. This darkroom process was meticulous, precise. Every tear shed was a chemical agent, every moment of quiet contemplation, a specific exposure time, every challenge overcome, a critical wash. And from this careful, often arduous development emerged a character of undeniable clarity and profound depth. You weren't just changed, you were revealed. The faint outlines of your potential sharpened into vivid definition. Your empathy, once perhaps undirected or easily exploited, now possessed an unwavering discernment, a powerful boundary. Your inner authority, once dormant beneath layers of people-pleasing, now radiated with a quiet, undeniable power. Your resilience, tested and proven in the crucible of solitude, became an unshakable foundation. The image that developed within that sacred darkroom of isolation was not merely a better version of your old self. It was a completely new print, vibrant and rich with detail, capturing the essence of a being forged in fire and polished in silence. The person who emerges from this wilderness is one who understands the profound difference between being alone and being lonely. One who values genuine connection precisely because they have learned to thrive without it. One who is deeply empathetic, yet profoundly self-protective. One who moves with an intentionality born not of desperation, but of deliberate self-mastery. This developed character, chosen one, is the undeniable truth that will now stand before the one who once cast you aside. They will look for the fuzzy, underdeveloped negative they thought they knew, the one they rejected because they could not see the inherent light within it. But what they will encounter is the fully realized, sharp, indelible print. An undeniable masterpiece, a testament to the divine hand that guided you through the darkness, not to punish, but to perfect. You are not merely surviving the wilderness, you have become the wise and formidable guardian of its sacred secrets, wearing your developed character like an unyielding armor, beautiful in its strength, compelling in its truth. This indelible truth, this developed being, is what awaits their recognition. This is what they could not possibly have foreseen. The lowest season was not merely a time of external rejection, a blow delivered by an unwitting instrument in your grander story. It was a deeper, more insidious battle fought within the sacred confines of your own mind. They did not just deny your worth, they attempted to dismantle your very perception of reality, to sever the vital connection between your inner knowing and the truth of the world. This was the dark art of gaslighting, a corrosive acid poured directly onto the foundations of your discernment, designed to make you doubt your senses, question your memory, and ultimately, to mistrust the unwavering compass of your own intuition. They sought to convince you that your pain was an overreaction, your clarity an illusion, your legitimate concerns mere paranoia. They would rewrite history before your very eyes, twisting facts, denying events that undeniably occurred, all with an unwavering gaze that dared you to challenge their false narrative. Each dismissal of your feelings, each scoff at your perfectly valid observations, was a calculated chip, at the fortress of your self-trust. You felt the ground beneath your feet turn to quicksand, your internal world becoming a distorted funhouse mirror where nothing was as it seemed. The enemy understood that if they could break your ability to discern truth from falsehood, if they could make you believe you were crazy or too sensitive for seeing what was plain, they would gain absolute power over your psychological landscape. They aimed to disorient you so thoroughly that you would become dependent on their version of reality, forever seeking validation for what your soul already knew. Understand this, chosen one, that fog of confusion, that gnawing sense of self-doubt that plagued your waking hours and infiltrated your dreams was not a failing on your part. It was the direct, agonizing effect of a deliberate psychological assault. Your struggle to cling to your truth in the face of their relentless invalidation was not a sign of weakness, but a testament to the inherent strength of your spirit, fighting to maintain its sovereignty even when every external force conspired to strip it away. You were in an invisible war, battling for the integrity of your own mind, trying to distinguish between genuine perception and the insidious seeds of doubt planted by another. They wanted you to be lost in that labyrinth, perpetually seeking an exit that only they seemed to possess. But the seed of your authentic self, though buried under layers of manufactured confusion, never truly died. Even in the deepest trenches of that psychological battlefield, a faint signal persisted, a whisper in the heart of your being that kept insisting, "This is not right. This is not true. I am not imagining this." That was your discernment, bruised and battered but not broken, stirring from its forced slumber. The process of rebuilding your self-trust began with honoring that whisper, however quiet it might have been at first. It started with the courageous act of acknowledging that the discomfort, the gnawing unease, the gut feeling that screamed foul play was not a flaw in *U*, but a righteous alarm bell ringing against the manipulation. You began, perhaps tentatively, to re-examine the shattered fragments of your memories, not through their distorted lens, but through the clear, unfiltered gaze of your own knowing. You started to piece together the inconsistencies, to notice the patterns of denial and blame shifting, not as isolated incidents, but as a deliberate strategy. This was the moment you started to untangle the knots they had tied in your mind, to trace the source of the insidious confusion. It was a painstaking, often painful process, like sifting through wreckage to find precious, undeniable truths. Every small memory you reclaimed, every instance where you reaffirmed your own perception despite their fervent denials, was a victory. Each time you said to yourself, "No, I know what I saw, I know what I felt. My experience is valid," you were laying a new brick in the foundation of your rebuilt self-trust. This reclamation was not about external confrontation. It was about an internal revolution. It was about severing the invisible cords that tethered your perception to their deceptive narrative. You learned to discern the difference between constructive feedback and destructive gaslighting. One seeks to elevate and clarify, the other to confuse and control. You began to treat your internal alarm system with respect, recognizing that your body's automatic recoil, the sudden chill, the inexplicable anxiety in certain situations were not signs of fragility, but sophisticated intelligence, warning you of energetic misalignment or veiled malice. The fight against gaslighting then transformed into the profound journey of validating your own reality. It was about re-establishing the sacred truth that your internal experience is the primary authority on your own life. No one, absolutely no one, has the right to tell you what you saw, what you felt, or what you experienced. Your feelings are not up for debate. Your memories are not subject to external revision. This understanding became a powerful shield, protecting your mind from future assaults. You learned to distinguish between the noise of external narratives and the clear, resonant frequency of your own truth. You stopped seeking their approval for your reality and instead anchored yourself firmly in your own knowing. This period of intense internal reconstruction fortified your discernment to an unprecedented degree. You emerged from that battle not just healed, but profoundly transformed, armed with an unshakable confidence in your own judgment. The enemy's attempt to break your discernment inadvertently sharpened it, making you acutely sensitive to deception and fiercely protective of your inner truth. You now possess an unwavering clarity, a deep, intuitive radar that instantly identifies manipulation. This newly forged self-trust is not merely a restoration. It is an upgrade, a permanent evolution in your capacity to navigate the world with wisdom, integrity, and an unshakable belief in your own discerning power. You have become a sovereign entity, your mind a fortress no longer penetrable by the shadowy tactics of those who would seek to bend your reality to their will. This powerful, re-established trust in yourself is the ultimate safeguard, ensuring that the ground beneath your feet will always be solid, guided by your own unwavering inner compass. You have walked through fires that would consume lesser souls, navigated valleys of shadows that tested the very fabric of your being, and stood unyielding in the face of betrayal that sought to dismantle your spirit. Each scar earned, each tear shed, each moment of quiet resilience has forged an internal core of unshakable truth within you. It is a density, a gravity, a profound spiritual weight that you now carry not as a burden, but as a living, breathing testament to your divine commissioning. This is not a weight that makes you heavy. It is a weight that anchors you to the bedrock of your true self, making you impenetrable to the flimsy deceptions and shallow manipulations that once held sway. And this is precisely why a new, undeniable phenomenon has begun to manifest in your reality: the repellent anointing. You now emanate an energy, a vibrational frequency so distinct and so pure that it acts as a spiritual irritant to those whose intentions are anything less than honorable. The very air around you, charged with the authentic power of your hard-won wisdom, becomes an oppressive force for those who thrive in shadows and operate through artifice. They cannot stand in your light because your light does not just illuminate. It incinerates the cloaks of pretense they wear so skillfully. It is an anointing that does not merely protect you, it actively pushes away, creating an invisible, yet intensely felt, boundary around your sacred space. Observe them closely now, these people who once knew how to slip under your radar, how to charm their way into your trust, how to subtly twist your perceptions. Watch the subtle shifts in their demeanor when they are in your presence. Their eyes, once so adept at holding a false gaze, now dart away, unable to meet the direct, unblinking truth they perceive radiating from your essence. Their practiced smiles falter, a nervous tick betraying the smooth facade. Their glib words, once so convincing, now catch in their throats, becoming hollow echoes in the face of your spiritual solidity. They may not consciously understand why, but their very being registers a profound discomfort, an inexplicable urge to retreat, to escape the undeniable pressure of your authentic self. This is not something you actively do or consciously project. It is an inherent property of your elevated state, a natural consequence of your alignment with divine truth. Your spiritual weight now functions like a high-frequency spiritual sonar, detecting and rejecting anything that is out of tune with your vibrational harmony. Manipulative people, the emotional vampires, the covert narcissists, the subtle schemers, they feel exposed, seen through. Even when you utter not a single word of judgment, your very existence in their proximity acts as a mirror, reflecting their unvarnished truth back at them, and it is a reflection they cannot stomach. Their carefully constructed illusions crumble in the face of your sheer spiritual integrity, revealing the fragile, hollow core beneath. They will find themselves unable to maintain their usual tactics. Their attempts at gaslighting will feel like dry dust in their mouths, lacking any real power. Their attempts at emotional blackmail will seem absurd, pathetic, their hooks finding no purchase in your now unyielding spirit. The games they play, the psychological chess matches they initiate, will suddenly feel meaningless, their moves anticipated and rendered impotent by the sheer clarity of your discernment. They will experience an internal friction, a spiritual allergic reaction, as if their essence is incompatible with the very oxygen you breathe. This often manifests as an acute sense of anxiety, a sudden feeling of fatigue, an overwhelming urge to be anywhere but near you. They might rationalize it as a headache, a bad mood, or a sudden memory of an urgent errand, anything to escape the unbearable proximity to your truth. This repellent anointing is a silent guardian, a divine filtration system. It does the heavy lifting of boundary enforcement for you, sifting your environment, gently but firmly nudging away those who mean you ill. You no longer need to expend precious energy arguing, defending, or even confronting these individuals. Their own discomfort drives them away. They are not repelled by your anger or your aggression. They are repelled by your peace, by your truth, by the quiet, unshakable power that has settled within your soul. It is the spiritual equivalent of oil and water. Their density and yours simply cannot mix without causing a profound and unbearable separation. The beauty of this new reality is that it requires no effort on your part. You do not have to fight for your space or protect your energy in the same way you once did. Your anointing now performs this service automatically. You will simply notice that certain people, individuals who once caused you significant distress or drained your vital force, begin to fade from your periphery. They will stop calling, stop seeking your attention, stop attempting to engage. They will find excuses to be elsewhere, their subconscious minds guiding them away from the source of their profound spiritual discomfort. They cannot linger in your orbit, for to do so would be to face the uncomfortable truth of their own manipulations, a truth your presence now lays bare without a single word being spoken. This is the ultimate divine affirmation of your journey, chosen one. The spiritual weight you carry, forged in the crucible of your trials, is not merely for your inner strength. It is an active force that reshapes your outer world. It clears the path, purifies your connections, and ensures that only those aligned with your highest good can comfortably remain in your sacred space. Embrace this profound protective gift. Understand that the discomfort of others in your presence is not a reflection of any fault within you, but rather a powerful confirmation of the immense spiritual authority and integrity you have now embodied. You have earned this peace, this automatic discernment, this divine filter. Walk in it with confidence, for you are now truly impenetrable, a beacon of truth in a world that desperately needs your unwavering light.